Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of Remembering John Perakos. Thank you so much. I have with us Kate Holt, who's the Executive Director of the New York Core Energetics Institute, long-term teacher, long-term international teacher, and one of the senior leaders within the Core Energetics organization globally. Hi, Kate.
Hello, Vernil. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, look, thank you for coming on board. I'm so keen to get whatever experiences our broader group and outside of our group have had with John, and as you know, a celebration of the centenary of his birth. It seems to have gone quick. It doesn't seem that long ago he was with us, and yet it's been over 20 years, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, and it's 20 years since he passed, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about that too, the 100 and the 20 coming together. It's interesting, but that makes sense. He was almost 80. He was just about to turn 80 when he passed. So,
Yeah, wonderful. So look, I wanted to just check in with you. I mean, how did you meet John? How did you come into his work?
I was working with a core energetics practitioner locally.
Yeah,
I was in the Philadelphia area.
right.
And in fact, I'm sure you've interviewed Karen Wilner. That's who I was working with.
Of course.
And um, I'm just going to get rid of a few dings.
Oh, I
So
thought that was just me externalizing my inner monologue just there.
that was John approving.
I like that one better.
So anyway, I was working with Karen,
Yeah.
and at the time, I'm a nurse, and I was a
Mhm.
hypnotherapist, and I was working with clients, but I was helping people quit smoking and things like that.
Yeah.
But everybody who was coming to me had some deeper issue, and there was kind of this feeling like I wish I could help them with this deeper issue, but I don't really know what they need.
Yeah.
And so kind of, I'm doing my own transformation work, and so Karen recommended that I apply to the program,
Yeah.
and I did. And I was interviewed, I was accepted, and I was feeling pretty on the fence about
Right.
it.
Right.
And I really didn't know what I was getting into. There were no intro weekends back then. You just signed up and you committed for 4 years, and it seemed crazy.
Wow.
But anyway, I was trying to decide, and I had a dream. And in the dream, John Perakos, whom I had never met, although I had seen pictures of him, was welcoming me into an attic, like I was going up. And I felt such warmth in the dream, and I kind of woke up and said, "Okay, I'll do it." Um,
Love it.
so I know that sounds, I don't know how that sounds, but to me it sounds a little like hokey spiritual, but it actually did feel like a spiritual connection. And and when I'm having difficulty with a decision, I will often get a dream that makes things very clear for me. So in this case, it was John.
How wonderful. And when did you get to meet John personally?
Yeah, so then of course I met him. He was teaching in the program when I was a student in my first 2 years, and
Right.
he died in my second year. So I don't really know John that well, actually. He was this icon,
Yeah.
charismatic image of this man,
Yeah.
or image of this charismatic man.
Yeah.
And he was, I never necessarily felt like he liked me. I don't think he disliked me, but like I think I wanted to be seen by him, and I wasn't necessarily being noticed.
Yeah.
But then he had he would see all of the students for at least one session. So even if you weren't working with him, he would see. So I went up to New York to meet with him, and when he came out of the room to bring me back, and
Yeah.
he said, "Hello, nursey." And I said, "Hello, doctor." Like, I don't know, I just played along,
It just
like
came out.
it was just something, so obviously he had read something about me. He knew I was a nurse.
Yeah, yeah,
And we went in and we had the session. And I mean, to me, it's a very memorable session. John said to me, I was talking and he's listening, and mostly he had his eyes closed.
yeah.
And um, and I think he was also like listening for energy and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, he had his eyes closed and he said to me, "I can feel your demand." And I was like, "What?" Like, I was shocked. What
What the
demand? I don't have a demand. And he was kind of laughing, and he was like, "Yeah, what's your demand here?" So I got quiet for a minute, and then I realized I had a whole list. I want this session to be really, I came all the way to New York, it better be good.
Yeah,
And I I want to be on the faculty very soon, like just just I wanted something big to happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He could feel that. And so that actually was the big thing that happened for me, because I
Mm.
my demands had been very unconscious to me up until that point.
Wow.
So, yeah. So anyway, in that session, a little while later, he had his eyes closed, and I'm telling him my stories, and his eyes are closed, and then I got quiet, and he's not moving or doing anything.
You didn't hear a snore at that point or
I
anything.
didn't hear a snore, but I did think he's asleep. I thought, oh, he's asleep.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's like 78 years old.
You
Good
could have
chance
fallen
that
asleep.
he
Yeah.
take a little snooze. And I said, "John," and he said, "Go on." So I went on, and then it seemed to me that after that, it became a very dynamic, energetic session
Yeah.
that felt like a whirlwind. I went out of there feeling very much more in my body and in contact with myself.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that meeting.
Yeah.
I obviously didn't go back to him. I already had somebody that I was working with.
Sure.
So it was memorable. And often when John was teaching,
Mhm.
um, it was back at a time when when people would get down to either bathing suit or bra and underwear or whatever,
Yes.
uh, to do the body readings. Um, and I remember him teaching in one of our classes, and it was going on, and then finally he said, and of course he said it with a Greek accent I can't do, but he said, "Somebody, for God's sake, take off your clothes," which just cracked me up. And I knew exactly what he meant, but I thought, God, if anybody taped it, they would be shocked. And then, of course, somebody volunteered for a body reading, and went on from there, and
Yeah.
always very deep work
Yeah.
when John was leading it. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I mean, I was going to ask you, what was the thing that is most memorable for you personally with your experience with John? And I still want to ask it, but I just want to
Yeah.
also acknowledge that's so fantastic how, what you discovered in that first session. I mean, my goodness, such a cornerstone of our essence that up till
Oh,
then had been blind and can open up so much more. I feel so excited that you share that actually. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, so there is I don't know if it's more memorable, but another really memorable moment with him that
Yes.
was transformational for me
Yeah.
was, he was leading a workshop in New York, and I went as a participant. He
Yeah.
knew I was a student. Excuse me.
Nursey.
And what's that?
Nursey.
Nurse, right. So, at that time, and some people who know me would say not just at that time, but I was somebody who my hand went right up. I'm going to work, I'm ready. So Friday, it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. Friday night,
Yeah.
he said, "Who wants to work?" My hand shoots up, and I did a little piece of work. It wasn't a huge piece of work, but I did do a piece of work. That part I don't really remember.
Hmm.
And then the next day, um, few people worked, and then there was a space, and I, I raised my hand again. I'm
Yeah,
ready to work again.
yeah.
And he came over and he looked at me and he goes, "You again." And I was honestly, I was crushed. I
Wow.
was crushed. Like it felt like such a blow that it was almost like hearing someone say you're too much, you know,
Oh, wow.
which, went to a younger wound in me.
Mm.
So, he said that and then I was in some sort of
Place. Yeah.
yeah, reaction whatever to this that was very like it was really hard for me to pay attention after that. I was just in this thing. So, he soon after that, he got us into a big circle around this room. There must have been 30 of us.
Right.
And we were standing and doing staccato breathing.
Yeah.
And, and it felt like it was going on forever, right? It was just, I'm sure you've done it. It's hard work. You really work hard when you do staccato breathing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was going around the room kind of trying to provoke people a little bit, like or just smiling at them, like encouraging them in certain way
Yeah.
different things. And um, he got around to me, and I say this like this was again getting in touch with something I didn't even know lived in me.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, "You'll never get to me."
Ooh, lovely.
And he had such a big smile on his face, like, great, like you're there now. And then it was like, oh, I have this in me, this place that would say you'll never get to me. Again, this really powerful transformational moment. And
Yeah.
another thing he said to me in that workshop was, you need to integrate the work.
Mm.
And I did not know what he meant. I just didn't know what he meant. Like I think when I first came into the work and felt that the freedom to express myself
Yeah.
like I had never felt before, that I just wanted to keep bringing it and bringing it and bringing it. Like that, I felt like, oh, that's what we do here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And he said to me, you need to integrate the work. And that literally took me on another part of my journey for like the next year of what does it mean to integrate the work?
Yeah.
And then of course I began to integrate the work. And one of the things I learned about was containment and
Entertainment.
making space for others. And I have a friendly
Hello, Kitty.
so yeah, it was just again another transformational piece. So I didn't have all that much contact with John, but the contacts that I had were really powerful. Yeah.
Wow, terrific. And so it's interesting because you had him in those days, you had him primarily as a teacher, and as you said, there were some requirements for that private work with him.
Yeah.
Um, how did you find that your reaction or your engagement with him as a teacher was affected or not by the private work that you did?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think that that private work came when I was in my second year. So I don't know, probably in the fall.
Yeah.
He taught us. I think he taught us in December, and then
Oh,
he
that was
died.
his. I was going to say December, and then January was when he passed away,
And
wasn't
then
it?
he died in
February.
February 1st, he
Yeah,
died.
yeah, yeah,
And so I do remember something else that happened in that teaching.
yeah.
And at there it's hard to explain. I'm not even sure I completely understand it yet. But um one of the teachers who was in the room with him
Hmm.
saw that I was in some kind of a struggle, and she said to me, "Go to him.
Yeah.
Go to him." And I went to him and I kind of bowed down before him,
Right.
like not in a subservient way or anything like that. It had more to do with um I don't know, like having the humility to ask for
Mm.
to ask to be seen, to ask to be noticed. It
Mm.
was it was also pretty profound for me. And then
Sure.
as I said, he passed, shortly after that. Um, Another thing that um, I wanted to mention to you was because even when I didn't feel like I knew him and that sort of thing, when I read his book,
Yeah.
which is not an easy book to read,
I
right?
found it tough going too in those years.
It's tough going. I mean, I'm not sure if it was because English was not his first language or
Yeah.
I think he was also brilliant. So his writing just for me did not flow so easily. But, I would stay with it and then I would start to feel him in
Mm,
the reading. Like I would feel his heart in the work.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I felt, really, really touched by him. So even though there was this, what seemed to me a little harshness from him,
Yeah.
like, I wanted him to see me as a sweet little girl or something.
Yeah.
But I could feel his heart and I really appreciated that. Yeah.
Amazing. So in terms of, I mean, look, you've done so much in yourself and into the broader community, helping people and building the institutes over the years. Um, what what effect do you feel of John in who you are today? Whether it's a
Mm.
thought or an action or even just the continuing of the work that you feel is more a direct influence of John himself.
So I often think, God, I wonder what John would think if he knew I was the director now, which obviously wherever he is, I guess he
He,
knows, right?
he probably goes, "Yeah, I see you now."
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he would have appointed me, right? But I was hired by our board of directors, and so there's this part of me that thinks he'd probably be shaking his head like, "Oh, how'd they let her do it?" But I think there's another part. Well, John called the work an evolutionary process, right? He didn't call it therapy. He called it
Mm,
an evolutionary process, and he really um, taught practitioners to see their client as a peer.
mm,
You're just helping somebody who, you're a little further on the road kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah,
And so in that regard, I feel like he 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 didn't judge people. Even though he's coming out of this white patriarchy, he
yeah.
didn't judge people by their economic level or any of those things.
Mm.
Um, but, I think he was homophobic. I think he was I was, I'm like, yeah, misogynist. I don't know if he was misogynist, but he certainly had old-fashioned values
I was going to
around
say
women.
it was quite traditional around the men-women role from
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
remember. Yeah,
So, um, but here it is, this evolutionary work, and now his institute that he founded has a woman director, and our academic director is a gay man, Jim Johnston.
Jim.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
so I think in some ways this is how the work is evolving. And in that, I hope it would make him happy, you know.
yeah.
And
Wonderful.
now, we're also feeling this call to evolve around looking at the patriarchy and looking at systems of oppression and things like that. And how do we incorporate that into this amazing work?
Yeah.
So that's an evolution that's in process and challenging for us, but the commitment is there. We want to evolve together.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And this is interesting because as I'm speaking to more of us, more of you around the world, it has definitely different emphases in the different parts of the world. In America, this seems to be quite a significant. What you've just described is a big movement in the mindset and the activities, and other places it's just already accepted and just par for the course because of the people that are there and that turn up and do the work. So it's wonderful to see, how we have evolved and across the world in our own ways, and that we're coming back together again with the philosophy and the science and the research that not only John did, but how that legacy is evolving today. Hey,
Mhm.
yeah, wonderful. So in terms of the institute now, I mean, if you were to be sitting here talking to John instead of me, not that I'm assuming anything here, by the way, what would you like to say to him if you could?
Hmm. I mean, I think I would want to thank him for this work. Like, this
Mm,
work has been life-changing for me
yeah,
personally, and then I have had the privilege of witnessing other people's transformation by using this model that he developed. Um, and it feels, you know, it it very much feels like it's a spiritual model, you know. Yes, it's emotional work. Yes, it's psychological. Yes, it's physical. But the depth of self-connection,
mm,
which to me is where we meet God, right? Is in our deepest connection to ourself. I I for me that path is through this work.
yeah,
And so, you know, I'll always be grateful for that. And and grateful for, you know, his passion. He wanted this work out there, you know.
yeah,
He really wanted, I mean, he obviously he taught all over the world. He really wanted it. He wanted people to benefit from it. And it has grown and it can grow a lot more, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so
So I
true.
would thank him. I would thank him.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we were gracious. We were very grateful that John was able to make it down here a couple of times before he did pass on. So we got to see him in Australia, and it was
Mhm.
that same energy. He was wanting to. Yeah, thanks. I'm feeling the same. I, I'm feeling very touched by what your
Mm,
did there, and I'm remembering him, and it's a lovely moment to remember when he was with us down here. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank.
I don't think I realized you went back that far.
Hey, it's in the genes. It's just I just look this way. Yeah, but no, look, thank you. I appreciate your time, and we're going to chat some more about all sorts of other things. But thank you for the wonderful memoir of John from yourself, and I really appreciate this wonderful vulnerable sharing of yours because I
Mm,
have tears in my eyes and my heart feels very full and I'm feeling connected to our community globally, and it's almost as if there's a room full of us right here with us.
mm.
So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ranil.
All right, you have a great day, and we'll chat soon.
Okay.